Special meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Roll call, please, Ada.
Mr. Nielsen,
Here.
Mrs. Contreras, Mr. Rader,
Present.
Mrs. Reyes, Mrs. Sashanek.
Is anybody Zooming? No Zooms? Sorry.
Okay. Take an opportunity here to stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. I'd like to take just a moment of silence here this evening and be thoughtful for the start of school and teachers and all the staff and all the work that they've done to get ready for that. All right, thank you very much. I think the next item on our agenda is call to the public. Have we any notice from any of the public, Ada, this evening? No. Well then, I'd like to recess this meeting and go into a public hearing at the present time. Dr. Freeman, would you like to take care of that?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Can you hear me now? Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. There's two items for public hearing tonight. One is on the instructional minutes plan, which we introduced before. It requires a minimum number of minutes or hours per year, and we have to designate as a school district how we plan to accomplish that. The proposal we put forward before the board last time was to keep the instructional calendar as published, but essentially divide the calendar to two kinds of days, state days and district days. The number of extended 7-hour days that Littleton has meets the minimum statutory requirement for this piece of legislation. So we're calling those state days, and in fact, I think we exceed that by a few days. And then we're calling early release days district days. This is important to us because there is a financial penalty in the statute for districts that have too many student days of remote learning. So given the fact that we think with mask and vaccine prohibitions for school districts and other government entities, we're going to be managing illness through the year as we try to keep our schools open to in-person learning, sending people home to learn from home, and we'll be tallying up those days. The threshold is pretty high in the first year. There is a phase down, but we'll be counting state days toward that threshold and not district days. We also meet a minimum number of minutes or hours in our AOI program. We had, I think when we brought it to you before, about 100 kids enrolled in. We're adding kids every day as the school year gets closer to opening. More and more people are electing to switch to online only. People are concerned, I think, about the spread of illness in the community and exposure to that. So that is pretty dynamic. Enrollment in our schools and in our online school are changing daily. What we have put down for attendance monitoring so that this plan can be auditable. During in-person learning, attendance is taken once in the morning and once in the afternoon. If students are in person but remote because of a quarantine, attendance will still be taken 2 times a day. If students are in the online academy, they actually log the number of minutes engaged, and they have to total up to a minimum number. That is just under 5 hours a day for 180 days. I think there might be a calculation on your attachment if we open that. It's 297 minutes a day on average to get to the 800, and I think that's 891. So through the Gradebook and Remind system, families will be submitting their online log, and then that will be tallied and recorded and submitted for funding. Those students are funded at 95%, and we have some teachers dedicated to that, and we're looking at being able to expand capacity to meet the need in the community. Those are the two schedules for the two kinds of program, the number of days. This is our second time for going over this, so it will be on the agenda in August for board action to adopt, and then that will be the plan until we change it with the Department of Education going forward. I think the important thing for everybody is we're not changing our instructional calendar. The plans and the commitment we made to our community, the alignment we've done with the high school and other districts or other schools in the region will remain the same. This really will be more of a back office tracking and auditing feature for the school district to meet all the requirements of this statute. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions members have.
Any questions from members of the board?
I have
No? Please, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I was Dr. Freeman, and I apologize for not asking this at last meeting. Is there any advantage to classifying days as, or classifying more days as state days? I know we've got those 44 early release days that are classified as district days, but instruction still does occur on those days. I mean, how are those instructional hours that occur on early release or a district day counted towards our total state day hours? Does that make sense?
So under this new statute, the paradigm everybody's used to is seat days and, counting at 100 days and being in school 100 days. And it was a huge transition in paradigm this year. And COVID wasn't the only influence. There are some other influences at work from other lobbying groups. For instance, for kids in high school who are in league sports or who are equestrians or maybe even holding jobs somewhere, to be able to get education credit for some of the work they're doing outside education. So you have kind of at the same time in the legislature these forces for flexibility for credit for learning that would not be typical seat time, with pressures on remote learning because of COVID and quarantine and those kind of things. So the law is remarkably flexible departure from the paradigm we've known in the past, which is, assuming you're in the chair means we're assuming you're learning. And that learning can happen in lots of different ways in lots of different places. So actually, I think the minimum hours in a 7-hour day would have been met like in 128 days. Now, one of the reasons that our day was that length and established years ago to meet this calendar was there was a law change a couple years ago which subtracted from the statute all the subtractions. So we used to have to take first bell, last bell, and if your passing time was more than 4 minutes, you had to subtract it, and if your lunch was 30 minutes, you had to subtract it. So we had to go through in the minimum hour allocation and do all of these deductions from the school day. So right now in the curriculum office, there are these model allocation of instructions for social studies, science, math, English, language arts, and specials. Those aren't changing. None of that work was redone. So the early release day is a little shorter and some of the periods are shortened, but the same amount of allocated time to instruction per subject will occur this year as previous years. Mm-hmm.
Question, John, made me think of something here. So I think you said something, you can't overdo it. So in 5 hours, 180 days, 900 hours, what happens if you've got a young man, young woman that decides to do 6 hours a day and they finish in 160 days? Do they just take the last 20 days off? And
we have put together a curriculum package of materials for online kids and to support them, actually stuffed backpacks and with computers and things for them to take home. So there is probably a maximum to teacher-prepared materials, but they also have access to other online resources, the same as school kids who are here in school. They can exceed those hours, and what has to happen for us to have a fully funded AOI kid is they have to meet the minimum. There's no reason they can't stop learning. I wish what we could do is once they keep going is credit that to the next year, you know, like, yeah, like online learning carry forward, like your charitable tax deductions or something. So I don't think that's really available to us. They have to meet the minimum, and then when they meet the minimum to be full-time AOI, they're funded at 0.95. So there's no bonus credit for extra time, I don't think. Am I right on that, Ms. Chizzy? We can't get like 1.1 or 1.2 or, yeah, all right, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Freeman, appreciate that. Item 6B, you'll take care of that one as well, safe return to in-person learning.
So this is another part of the legislation that required that we have two public meetings, airings. I'm not sure that they said hearings, as long as they're on the board agenda, that we had a public discussion about those. What we did at the last meeting is we reviewed the revised mitigation plan with 3 columns instead of 5. The discussion of the board at the time was we don't know that immunizations, metrics, and everything happening in the district is going to neatly fall into green, yellow, red. And what the management team was going to strive to do was to stay green and shift to yellow when we needed to. So, for instance, one of the shifts that will be happening tomorrow is that students in the cafeteria won't be facing each other. They'll be facing the same direction, so they're not breathing in each other's faces. I think kids are still traveling to specials. But we're going to, clean up in between so that if there is some spread of illness, we can isolate it to cohorts. Kids still can play outside. Outside is, one of the best and safest places for them to be, but we're looking at restrictions like that. Teachers have been asked to, if they had in the past their kids' desks in groups, to go back to rows and columns so that there's some space in between. So those kind of accommodations are being made, still with staying open for in-person learning. And then we have had to quarantine staff, and today we quarantined some students. They're generally out for 10 days, but there are some exceptions depending on testing and vaccination and symptoms and those kind of things, which our Human Resources Department tracks and consults not only with the people in our building, but with the county health department to make sure we're on the same page. Excuse me. So that will stay the same. One of the requirements for safe return to schools from ESSER was that we, besides hold public hearings, which is a way for the public to be informed and to weigh in, is to get some feedback, and we don't get a lot of call to the public or feedback at our meetings. So we did a parent survey, which is attached, and if we can open that up. There's no changes to the mitigation plan from the last time we talked about it. But these are the questions that went out to parents, and so we've found them very informative. So are the kids going to be wearing a mask? That was over 80% yes. And what we found before when we asked the kids to come back is, even though people say you can't get a 5-year-old to wear a mask, is that the kids are so happy to be in school, they're trying their best to be compliant with what the expectations are. There are some people who either think it's too hard or not good for their kids. One of the issues we'll have tomorrow is, because our school buses are considered public transportation, the county health department has deemed them as mask required. You don't have to ride the bus. We'll have masks with the bus drivers for kids who show up without them. We won't leave them at the curb. But that might be a point of friction. Then in the next question, Are they currently vaccinated? And this is pretty consistent with the zip code information that we get. The majority are not. And so we're doing a lot of messaging about, you may not necessarily be doing it for yourself, do it for a family member, but also there are indirect consequences to people's choices. And the direct ones they get, like I get sick or somebody in my family gets sick, people understand that. The indirect ones are if there's a high degree of spread and illness in the community, your classroom gets quarantined and everybody's kids get sent home 10 days because one person was sick. And that's an indirect response, but the more people who are healthy, the more in person we can keep, the more rooms. I'm happy to take a question right now. We don't have to wait till the end.
I was listening to, they were talking about governor Ducey and some things that he's either implemented. I think it's already legislation, but I can't talk too intelligently about it. But they were talking about that if there is an outbreak in schools, this was all about schools,
Mm-hmm.
that if there is a child in a classroom that is positive, COVID positive, you cannot quarantine the entire classroom if there's been, and obviously there's exposure to every child, that there is some kind of state legislation either passed or in the making that you cannot quarantine the entire classroom.
Yeah, we don't, I'd love to find out with the source, but what we did is because there's confusion about this, we went and actually looked up the statute. It says, cannot require masks for staff or students in school, on school grounds. So if it's not during the school day, or not on school grounds, it's not prohibited in the law. That's the full extent of the miscellaneous components of the budget.
Positive COVID testing. Can you quarantine a whole classroom if one child is positive? My understanding is you cannot.
Well, so what we're working on, the guidelines we're working on are from the county health department. There isn't, as far as I know, and then staff can jump in if I'm overstepping, anything in statute. In fact, there's a good chance that putting something about mask prohibitions in a budget bill may not have been appropriate in the first place. It hasn't been contested yet. So the work that we do falls under, federal law, and each level is superseding state law. Then we have administrative code, which is set by the State Board of Education, and that's usually Arizona ACC, Administrative something code. And we have to follow state board rules, and then we have board policy, which is established by all of you. All of those things in superseding effect we're responsible to complying with. So what we're doing right now is working with the county health department on what are the guidelines for quarantine. The guidelines for quarantine from the county health department are where we get the guidance on masks on buses. The guidelines from quarantine from the county health department are what tell us the rules for quarantining. And I went over that very quickly because it depends on the exposure, the cohort group. There are differences for vaccinated, unvaccinated, if you take a test in 5 days, if you have symptoms or not. So the first level of response is we have an exposed group. And that would be, for the most part, a classroom and a teacher. It could be more than that depending on what happened during the day. Then the next part is triaging. What are the particulars for each of the people in that group? So the teacher is a essential worker, gives you some flexibility, but if the teacher was both exposed, not vaccinated, and having symptoms, we could quarantine the class so the teacher could teach from home. We could quarantine the teacher would teach from home, but you could still have the class, or the class would be at home depending on the exposure. So every case will be different, but I'm not aware of anything in U.S. code, state code, or state rule that addresses that. And I really think that it should be the purview of the health department and not politicians reacting to other kinds of pressures from constituents. So right now, we are looking at the letter of the law as passed by the legislature in the miscellaneous section of the state budget, and county health. Those are the two things. Am I right? Okay. Oh, you're back in the old, pull the mic down toward you and, okay. All right, so that was the item on parents masking, and so it makes us aware of and consistent with the other data we have and, or vaccinating. And what happens, of course, is I heard Will Humble on the radio today because they were talking about the new CDC guidance on even if you're vaccinated, you should be masked inside. He said there's no real evidence to support that. You're 7 or 70 times less likely to contract the disease, and you're 2,000 times less likely to be in the hospital or something like that. So the statistics are coming out and they're changing and the rules are changing. Yeah, we're trying to monitor that. I was in a meeting with Dr. Kelly today and she got an alert on her phone for the CDC, new changes, and relaying those out to principals and to the community. So I think this is going to be ongoing work at board meetings and at schools and communicating with all of our stakeholders. The next question was support your children going out to recess. Overwhelmingly, people are comfortable with playing outside. Question 4, do you have a plan if you have to return to at-home learning? And you can see that's about 3/4, 1/4. We were pleasantly surprised by that some people have been mindful of that being a possibility. We'll have to work on that other 27%, I'm sorry. But our social workers will be tasked to help those families and see what they can do with those resources. We did have last year when we were remote learning families with connectivity issues and parents struggling sometimes to provide the level of engagement and support that we needed to see for kids to be successful. So I'm sure that there are areas in our community, if that happens, they'll need some extra support. And then question 5, do we have 2 questions for? Oh, no, I'm sorry, I just need to scroll. Are you committed to keep your children at home if they're showing symptoms? And there's 3 naughty people who responded to the survey, but everybody else was being very good. And so far, it's a fairly small sample. We think, roughly speaking, we have about 4,000 families and, 5,600 kids or something enrolled right now, but they have more than one kid. So, we're only talking about 15% maybe of a response, but actually, that's not bad for 1 week. Usually, like when we do the parent survey for a board goal monitoring, we get a higher number, but we have it open for a month, and we're consistently pushing. I don't think there's anything really surprising about this feedback. It's like if we left it open longer, would we get a different result? I think it's pretty representative and typical, and helpful to us in using both for communication and how we respond. So this satisfies some of the components of the ESSER 3 funding for safer return to school, and there's not action required on it, but we wanted to inform the board and the community. And I don't know if there's any more questions. I can try to answer them, or if there's more information you need that we can go. All right, thank you.
If there's no other questions or comments, I'd like to go ahead and reconvene our regular meeting. Do I need a motion for that?
I'll move we reconvene to our regular meeting.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Did you need to take a roll call on that one?
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mrs. Contreras, Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes,
Aye.
Mrs. Sosnick.
All right. Again, item number 7 is board self-evaluation and information on that. We discussed the board self-evaluation previously, and are we going to do that actually tonight for the next 20, 25 minutes? Or is that what we need to?
Mr. President, when you and I reviewed the agenda, we made the assumption everybody would be here and doing it together, which isn't going to be true. So, I think you might ask members if, because we're going to have two people who are going to have to make it up. So the link is here. I mean, you can click on the link and do the survey now or at a later date and move the meeting along. But we did have an issue last time with chasing one or two people down to get it done so we could do the report. So, you're all here, you can do it now, or you can decide to do it later. We won't, when you get done and the last person hits submit, be able to auto-generate a report. School boards has to put that together for us. So there's no second discussion at stake of proceeding different.
Comments?
Me personally, I would prefer to do it when I can really focus in here. I don't know that I could feel comfortable just reading it and allocating the time to it, but I would also ask that if I could personally, I need reminders, so if I could get a reminder and easy access to the link, for me, that would be very helpful, and then I can make sure I'm timely.
So if you scroll down in the screen.
Oh, I can see
Yeah,
that.
I mean, so we'll have it here and then.
You're not on, Dr. Freeman.
It's available to you. Is it in board view only? Can the community log on and get that? No. It's board view only, so you have to log in. And who's scrolling on the screen here in front of me? Oh, because you're on a community view. Okay, so in the board view, you should be able to see, if I scroll down, I see supporting links, ASBA self-evaluation tool as a hyperlink. Are you finding that? Mm-hmm. And so we can do a reminder in Friday's update and, then, another one in a week or so. And then if you still haven't, I can start calling you every morning.
No, I don't need that, thank you. But a reminder would be great, and if I have trouble accessing it, I'll reach out.
Ada can help you.
Yeah, mhm. Thank you.
John?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I concur with that. Certainly want to be respectful of everybody's time here this evening, and they don't want to watch me take a survey for 20 minutes. So I'll
You'll
just make
sweat
sure.
and all that other kind
That's
of
right.
stuff.
I'll just make sure to get it done.
If we give ourselves 10 days, if we shot for the 6th of August, which is a Friday,
I'm good with that, thank you.
2 Fridays.
Ada, if you could put a reminder and send us out and make sure that the other two members here,
Mr. President, I'll be happy to do that.
thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's shoot by getting it done on or before the 6th of August. Next item.
You guys should do something like the last one to get it done buys coffee for the rest or something.
Ooh. Root beer.
Okay.
Item number 8, just kind of a discussion more about board goals. I think you've seen those goals there. The purpose of the survey is to help us again with the goals, and I think Mr. Rader, when he was president a year or two ago, got those, and I identified what the necessary goals were for the evaluation, and again, we'll do the same type of thing. And I'm grateful to Ada for all the work that she's done and kind of keep track of us. She's got the goals 1, 2, 3, and 4 all listed as to where we participated, what we can do, what's in the future, and whatever else. So she's done a good job of keeping track of us. Thank you very much, Ada. We appreciate that so much. Help keeping us online. That one, survey questions. What am I missing?
I think one of the things that one of the questions we had for the quorum was if we open annual board goals, the one pager says 7 annual board goals, where Ada's kind of got them all onto one page, was and we've had this discussion before, but with the year starting. Do you want to keep these, increase the number of visits, increase the, are you satisfied with them? Do you want to change them, modify them? One of the things that President Nielsen proposed is board members attending some professional development to talk about their jobs and their expertise and how it applies to one of the signature schools. And then possibly teachers deciding if, that would fit into any of the project or project-based learning they're doing. I don't know if that fits with one of those 4 goals as an extension or would be a separate goal. It's probably kind of hard to, with only 3 out of the 5 of us here, to make a commitment to it, but I think that was one of the questions Curtis had. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to recall our conversation.
No, that was a conversation. I was thinking you and I had talked about STEM academies and some of the teachers in there knowing about engineering, and there's about 3 or 4 or 5 different types of engineering. Well, I've been in the engineering field for 40 years, and there's more than 3 or 4 or 5 different kinds, and maybe it would be just an opportunity for me to go to one of those professional development ones and say, hey, not only have you got metallurgical engineers and civil engineers and electrical engineers or whatever, but there's all kinds of different things, and if they have any interest, they could invite us to come into classroom or whatever it might be. John, you could do something about government or whatever it may. Kathy, maybe healthcare issues, something else that you've got a flavor for, and just see if there's any interest in those in the signature school. So that's where that particular thing came from. So I don't know, comments, thoughts on that? Right, Kathy?
I mean, if it works in and it's valuable, of course. If it's not valuable, I don't want to waste
Agreed.
anyone's time.
Don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I don't need to do that. But if it's valuable, of course. I mean, there might be some interest and people go, yeah, that's great. I'd love to hear about it. So yeah, of course, I would be open to it.
Yeah. Anyway, well, so that was just a thought, whether we add it as a goal or not. It was just something to think about. We can discuss it a little bit more when we get back together on that and get the review or the results from our evaluation there. But that was a thought on that. John, any comments, thoughts on that?
No, thank you, Mr. President. Probably just echoing what Kathy noted. I mean, I'll certainly be happy to contribute to our schools in any way that we can. So if there's an identified need or if my expertise would be of some benefit to our students, I'm always happy to present. I do actually kind of think that may fit into our current goal 4 of engaging in different school events. And maybe, for some board member, it might look like presenting on your professional skill. Maybe it's just making a commitment to go in and read to kindergartners, once a quarter, right? So maybe it looks a little bit different for each school and or each board member. So I think it's a wonderful suggestion, and I'm happy to continue exploring that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So when we get some feedback from our other 2 members and see what they thought, but I think it would be something at least to look at and see the value of it, and then we can go from there. All right, anything else there? Survey questions? Dr. Freeman, item?
Mr. President, just a note on that goal too. I do want to also be cognizant for the 2 members that aren't here. I believe they're both teachers, which probably precludes them from participating in any activities that occur during our school day. So certainly want to, as we're crafting these goals, don't want to create an unrealistic expectation for any of our members as well.
Of course. Thank you very much for bringing that up. Anything else that we need to review, Dr. Freeman?
No, I think you can go to the next item.
Is that item number 10?
Survey questions number 9.
Okay.
I think I have a paper copy, so I'll need to, I'm getting there, I'm just trying not to become completely disheveled.
Okay, I'm just trying to go through and find that item number 9 here as well.
I don't see anything in my attachments or
Right, well, because we didn't do surveys last year because of COVID,
Yeah.
we had to go back into prior years, and if you remember, it was originated from the same time board members went out and talked to schools and asked about the concerns were, And that's when we had a big emphasis on quality of professional development. So the one question that went out, went out to, I think, both the teaching and the community, was our board treats individuals, including fellow board members, students, staff, and community members with respect. And what I remember is there was a strong degree of agreement with that. It was pretty affirmative for the board. The question is, I think it makes sense, since we've tested this item in the past, to keep it, but if there's any other things that the board would like to survey to the students or the staff or the community to get feedback from them when we do annual surveys this year.
Okay, thank you. Anything that comes to your mind along that line?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I guess the thing that just kind of pops into my head, and it's not overly complicated or complex, and I think it would maybe be more directed, well, it could be parents and or staff, is just, do you know who your governing board is, and have you engaged with them in some way, either through a meeting or at an event throughout the course of the year? And maybe it's a yes/no question, but I'd be curious to know what percentage of our staff is like, no, I don't really know who our school board is. And if that's the response, then I guess it demonstrates kind of a need for us to get into the schools and interacting a little bit more. And that's just a suggestion, of course.
Yeah, I think we can work on the wording and run that by everybody. We use the 4-point Likert, so instead of strongly agree and disagree instead could be not at all, and strongly agree could be frequently, and then some of the time or rarely, or something like that. But we're not giving the survey right away in the fall till later in the year, so we have a little time to fashion that, but I think it's a great suggestion. And both to the community and to staff, you would expect to see a little difference. So it'll be interesting to see what.
So just on that, Dr. Freeman, we're talking about putting our LED sign up over there. Could our beautiful pictures be put on that thing so people, as they drive by, probably see who we are?
Actually, one of our billboard broadcast initiatives is what we call Who Saids. So Who Saids are very important people in the community. So it's kind of a 3/4 bus shot and then a quote from you. And we'd love for you to be inspirational that way. It could be on why you serve on the board, why community schools are important.
We could get a picture of all of us together and.
You can do
slap
that,
up there.
yeah.
I mean, we've got the individual ones now, but maybe we need to.
I don't know if we took one of those in the past, but we can, if we get a meeting where everybody's here. Or we can arrange another time with a
Just
photographer.
arrange another time when we do have those opportunities to be together, and that way they know, hey, this is the whole board. And
so that was one of the ideas already generated for content.
thank you.
I just have one comment. One thing, if you look at other schools and what they do very well that I personally think we could do better, is their governing board, or even if you look at the cities, there's always where it's the mayor or council touting, I picked up trash today. I mean, they make a point to tell you what they did. And we don't do that. We don't really talk about ourselves. And if you look at surrounding, they talk all about, I picked up trash today. Oh, great, I went to the water company. Okay, but the point is their pictures are always there. You know who they are. Even if you may not care about the caption, you know who they are and what their purpose is. Whatever that looks like, we don't, and never have, really touted anything that we do, and we just do it kind of behind the scenes. And there's something to be said for, that as well, but we need a little bit more out there. Just to get the publicity.
But and
nothing
if
else.
it's those things that you've seen, you've been here a lot longer than any of us here.
Yeah.
There's some things in your expertise in seeing what's missing is, what we're looking for, what we can do to make this a little bit better. We want kids to come to our school district rather than
Right.
go other places. We want them here, and that's.
And what we lack is I know we have our POs, our PIO here, but what we really lack is we're not good about all the things we do great, right? We're good about, maybe you hear things but look at Dr. Freeman. He won an award, a prestigious award, right? that wasn't anywhere. I mean, you had to look for it, you had to find it. We should have had that on every marquee flaring around. It should have been in some brochure. I mean, those are big deals. To send a kid to where my superintendent is, you know, notable and got this award, sometimes that's just all a parent needs. Is, oh my gosh, if they're the leader at the top,
Yep.
that's perfect, right? I mean, when you look to a city, you look at the mayor, right? What's the mayor done? In ours, we look at the superintendent, but you want an amazing award. And I mean, I had to go hunt for it, right? Unless someone told me, I'm not even sure I would have known it, to be honest. So,
Yeah, it was kind of buried. to
yeah,
boot.
and that's not, those you tell parents, right? Look at
It was
who's
on
leading
page
our school.
15 of the West Valley View
Yeah.
on the back page, right? Sec-
We,
Yeah.
we do kind of suffer from chronic humility.
Absolutely.
Um,
And it's not easy to tout yourself, but.
Are
I
you
mean,
thinking mostly of social media or,
I don't care how you do it. I would tell you in other schools, they have it in brochures, handouts, videos. They put it on their marquees. I mean, anywhere there's a space, it's launched.
multiple media?
Multiple media. I mean, you're leading our schools, you're important. And the awards you've gotten and the accolades you get, but we don't do a good job about telling our community how special our leadership is. And that's critical when you're looking to send your children to school. Who leads that school district, right? So,
You know, even the focuses with our schools in here, we know what they are, but
That's
the
right.
community doesn't really know. And I don't know how many I've seen on Nextdoor saying, which school is a good school to go to?
Yep,
Well, if we had-
absolutely.
If we had a STEM, if we had a fine arts, we just need to be out there and find a way to get that out there,
Right.
whatever manner that might be.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all good, right? You read on social media, this is bad, this is bad. But how did it get there? One parent maybe, but we need to say they're all good and they all bring special talents, but they're all led by the leadership, school board. And so, yeah, we really need to get on that if
One
we're
of the
going
things
to survive.
One of the things I've noticed in competition is they don't mind repeating messages.
Oh, my goodness. no.
So, and I think this is another one of those, humility or just, we just assume you all know we're doing God's good work here and, but we do put some stuff out, but I think we could publish it more. But we think unless it's new, you've already seen it.
So,
And I don't think in today's media that's true. Just because you put something, it could flash by people's face, they don't recognize it, they don't see it until something else connects, and so,
how many times do they say it takes for you to pay attention? It's not one reading, right?
it's like 7 to 10 or
Okay,
something
so
like that.
if I read
yeah.
it 7 times, I got you. But if I see it twice, I probably don't
Just
remember.
one
you.
big bat, that's all you needed.
I'm just saying, it doesn't hurt to loop it. It doesn't hurt to loop it.
Yeah,
Humility probably stops us from doing much of that, though.
yeah. But we could take all the good ideas we have and do them 7 times.
If that's what studies show it
That
takes
much
a
more work.
person to
Whatever it
get
takes,
it
huh?
in their, I mean, like it's teaching, right? How many times do you say repetitive teaching? And you
Yeah,
finally
and we haven't done
get
that.
it.
I mean,
No,
and
we
that's,
haven't.
that's just set it up to go 7 times and not recreate it 7 times, so that's a great idea. And so, does that turn into a survey question?
I don't know, but I mean, Kathy prompted me to the thought that is, what media do the parents look at most frequently to find out about
Depends
what's going
on,
on in the
depends on
school?
their age.
Facebook, is it Twitter, whatever it might be? I don't know how you would word that, but maybe you put, which one do you use most frequently? Da-da-da-da.
Funny, I hear a lot about now TikTok.
Yeah,
3-minute short clip.
and they're,
Everybody knows what I do now too, because my grandkids showed me.
oh, yeah.
But everybody, it's
And-
3-minute short sweet. I mean, the floods in Arizona were all over TikTok.
And they put their TikTok on Instagram, and then they put their TikTok on, yeah.
What would it hurt, I mean, look at our superintendent, he won this, so what, okay.
We need to find out where their focus is. I mean, I deal with 18 to 30-year-olds at church, and some of them especially for this one, and some of them for this one, and this one won't do that one, and that one won't do that. So you try to find out how to contact them, and it's kind of just all over the place. And maybe that one, the question is to the parents. Well,
Yeah.
what do the parents look? And then maybe another one would be, what do the kids look? And see how the parents and the kids are crossing one another.
Yeah, well, I think we're fortunate with a new PIO, Mr. Nuanez, he's really hip and he's really into technology. Yeah, when you say an app to me, I spell it A-N-A-P, yeah. So, but we do have some other talented people on staff, and the suggestions are really valuable. I really appreciate that, because we really are, even if people don't see it, we're working at light speed behind the scenes, and thinking about getting the next thing done sometimes as opposed to publicizing what we already did. And so keep the conversation going. It's helpful. Other survey question ideas or things, I think you can always let Curtis know because we have a little time to work on it, but
I don't know
get
how
your
you
brains
how you
thinking and
do this one, Dr. Freeman, but I remember when I used to work a long time ago, we used to, I had,
you're working, you're just not getting paid.
that's true too, okay. But I'd bring them in and say, okay, if I gave you $10,000, what would you do first to do something
Mhm.
that, I don't know if you could say, if you were given, I know the parents were given $1,000 or whatever, somehow to tie it back, if there were funds available, what would you do with those in the school that your kids are
If
attending?
money were no problem,
Yeah,
what would you, yeah.
or, put a limit on it, $5,000 or something like that. Maybe you'll come up with some nice little ideas or some little things like that that might be helpful, or even the kids, they could talk with mom and dad and say, hey, mom and dad, if we had $5,000, what would be good to do in this particular school to, help or make things a little bit easier, nicer?
If your teacher had $5,000, how much would,
Yeah, what would you do with it? How many?
for the board, if money were no problem, for the teacher, if she had,
Or if the parents actually said, what, if I could suggest where to put my $5,000 or my $10,000, where would we put it?
okay, thank you.
Any others? Thank you. Does that take care of that number 10 there, Dr. Freeman?
No, that's future goals.
Oh, that's the survey questions.
We're on number 10.
Okay.
So the commitment the board made was to do 4 study sessions that were kind of about themselves. What we did is, we took the months and divvied them up, 1, 4, 7, and 10. October was generally the governing board's goals monitoring. And we're in month 7 now, which is reviewing your goals and your self-evaluation measures. Those can be included in the chapter on leadership in the monitoring report, board's progress on their goals as community leaders. A lot of times in January, especially we have new members on the board, we review district operations. You may recall last April, you talked about the governing board's goals for the school district, not for the board, but for the district, and revised those a little bit. Because we had in the past had a goal about technology. Turned out everybody's doing technology now. Nobody needs more of it. So how you might want to use that April meeting or any of the other dates, or if 4 meetings is adequate, for you really to talk about, your governance, your progress as a body, or the progress of the district outside of the things that are normally on regular meeting agendas. So it's an open-ended question. If that's working, or if you want to change it, or if you want to make additions. The other thing that I think that we kind of glossed over, trying to look, it was participation. One of your goals right now is participation in your own professional development school boards association. And Mrs. Sillis is adding those to your events calendar so you can look way out. I think she had some dates for February for meetings, and so she's taken the initiative to put some of the school board's events on your weekly reminder for advanced calendars so you can kind of look out in advance at registration or other things that you have going on to help support you in doing that. And I don't know, Mr. President, if there's, one of those you want to attend as a group. There wasn't much travel in prior years. The national convention was virtual. I don't know how the board feels, but I don't think that has quite the same professional development impact as being out, going out. And I think one of the big benefits, of course, is travel, is meeting board members from other states and other situations, or situations that feel eerily similar to yours in how they handled it or the kind of things that happened. Sometimes ideas that are shared, and others just an appreciation for how things are, because you hear about some people's stories are even more challenging than ours. So I'm not sure where the National School Board's meeting is coming up. That's usually in April, so it's a ways off. Is it San Diego? So that's easy to get to if you want to think about, I mean, I think there'd be a big benefit if you're going to go as a group. But that is in your goals now to participate in that, whether it's at this county, state, or national level, just to kind of be thinking ahead. And I don't really have anything else to add.
And I know the Bolts one in the local one in February is always a good one, because they always bring in what's going on in this part of that part of the different states. They have quite a few people come in there when it's been held in person in the past. I've enjoyed that one. They get people from all over the place there.
There will probably be some things, like we don't have policy change recommendations from them, but they'll probably show up on your agenda, if not in August, September, that respond to all the statutory changes. So some of the things that happened in the legislature this year and the other things are going on, you know, and of course all the issues around community health. I would imagine there's going to be education materials coming out for board members. And I heard one of the County Board of Supervisors talking this morning. They started a website called Just the Facts to deal with, you know, verified county election information that's different from the speculation and rumor that other people are putting out. And then their frustration is the speculation and rumor gets repeated so much that people think it's now a fact. So I think it's important as governing board members and elected officials to really be informed, you know, not just on what people are saying, but as much of the hard data behind what's happening, so you not only can represent your community, but not be necessarily swayed by sentiment, but making good database decisions. So availing ourselves of those opportunities. I mean, I know the law conference comes up in September. Some of us will be going to that. It's a little meaty.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah, so you might want to get registered for that. And it's here in town, I think. Is it Camelback Inn again, or is it Desert Ridge? Yeah, I can't remember, but Ada can get you that, and it's usually mid-late September. I can't remember.
Latter part of.
And even if you can only attend on a limited basis, usually once you're registered, you can get the resources online, which is the PowerPoints and handouts and those kind of things. It's at the Camelback Inn again. So that's a fact-filled. And then even when the lawyers are offering opinions, they tell you it's opinion, and there's not everybody agrees. Here's the 3 prevailing opinions. And so that, given the amount of discord over some of the issues we have, that might be really helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. Appreciate that. Any other comments, questions?
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess it's just as far as the future board session recommendations, if you will. I think just based on our previous conversation, an update on our social media marketing plan. Again, especially in light of some of the board's desires around social media and how the new billboard plays into that. And maybe, again, I don't know how this might look, but maybe there's even some social media training for the board members, right? I like to think I'm young and hip, but we could certainly help promote the district's postings, because as Kathy mentioned, a lot of times when it's the mayor touring the water plant, it's the mayor or the mayor's staff taking that social media, and then the city is then liking and helping promote it. So it can be a nice two-way street. So we can certainly be the district's partners in those efforts.
Right, we lack an entourage.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, my 25 Twitter followers, I'm sure would want to know what's going on in the district. But the other item that I'd I'd like to see more discussion on in the future is the budget. So I know, every year we of course approve the budget and our revenue control limit and take a look at ADM. But it's very, very, very top level stuff, right? And, within the city governments or at the legislature, you get some baseline budgeting. So anything new that's coming forward would be presented as, as part of your budget discussion. So any new programs, and just because this is top of mind, like the sign, right, that we're putting up would have been a part of our budget discussion because that's a new program or item that's being added that wasn't previously there. So I don't know how that could look. Certainly I'm not looking for staff to be, or for Mr. French to put together a 100-page PowerPoint every budget session that encapsulates every expenditure that the district has. But if there is anything new that's coming forward in the budget that wasn't there before, each budget session as part of those budget discussions, to have that presented to the board so we could take a look at what those new investments are each year. And I'm not trying to be critical, because I think a lot of that too comes to us throughout the course of the year, but maybe it's just one budget presentation. This is what's new in our budget this year, type of thing. So those were my two suggestions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate that, John. Kathy, anything more?
I wrote mine all down. I do it as I think, and these are all my little stick'ems, so I'll give them to someone. I'm not saying they're perfect, but I didn't have a bigger piece of paper, so I wrote them on all these stick'ems, so I can give it to someone, but thank you.
Mr. President, Mr. Rader, members of the board. So we have in the past done, some deeper dives at different times. So one of them is just, and I don't know across the 5 members, the level of familiarity with the terms and the formula and all of that. So that is one of the pieces, is what the components of the budget are and how it works. And so the challenge we have this year is we're out of teachers, and we'd like to have more, and we could pay more if we had them. But there's a serious Arizona teacher shortage.
Is that true for every school? I mean, would that not be?
It's regional, yeah. I mean, it's not just us. So, so what ends up happening is you have, one of the things the board has, a monthly expenditure report, which shows, compared to the budget, what we're drawing down on those items. So in the past, like when I was new here and we were growing 500 kids a year, we had to revise our budget in May based on the current year 100th day. Our expenditure report was in the negatives because we couldn't change our budget until the board adopted a new budget. But we needed 28 more teachers than we had budget for, and we already knew the kids were coming because some of them came between the 100th and the 180th day. So we would, until the budget revised, our expenditure report was in arrears. And now what we might expect is we have a budget and our expenditure is falling short, which can either result in carryover or meeting other needs that have been deferred and those kind of things. So that's continuous and ongoing. And the other side is the capital budget, which includes regular formula capital, override capital, and then bond capital. And so those are separate compartments. What we try to do usually is kind of chunk that up so we're not going over all of that all night for all of you, because there is a certain time in the evening when it doesn't help anymore. And I think especially with us being back in person and Mr. French being new at the job, there is a budget presentation just on how things work. What happens is we need to, for us to communicate effectively, agree on what some of the vocabulary is. Like when we say operation and capital and different kinds of capital and different kinds of operation and the fund codes that we work under. So I think sometimes we present things that make perfect sense to us and relate to everything else we're talking about, but that's because we know the relationships. And if you don't work at it, you may not. And so, I can, Mr. Rader, if you want to work with the president, and I can work with the president to kind of chunk that out and bring that along at different regular meetings and different components, and then maybe those just become standard. Kind of like the 14710 thing is that we review the capital budget at a certain point in the year, and M&O and expenditure. We are on the next regular meeting agenda revising the expenditure budget with the new forms from the new legislative action to correct all the stuff that was in the old forms that we simply use to meet the statutory requirement of adopting a budget by July 15th. So at the August 10th meeting, we're giving you the new forms with the new budget that's actually aligned to the new laws. So you're going to see the budget again, and I'm thinking that might be a good time because it is once again at that level you were talking about, that 10,000 foot level. You have all the forms attached, is to go back over how the budget works and maybe what the components are, how we divide them up in the budget, how we divide them up in the expenditure report, so it starts to make sense. Otherwise, it's just a page of tiny numbers for most people. I mean, the forms really are probably more designed for the Department of Ed and the Auditor General than for board members.
It might be too, that we might not need all the information about salaries and about this and that and the other, but if it comes along that we've got some type of a project, solar panels or repair work down here, just, that would be brought out in singular. That's what you're kind of talking about. It's more project rather than the standard.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the opportunity to clarify. I think from my perspective, it's just like what's new, right? So as we're looking at the budget in March, and as you guys are putting it together, like, okay, we had X number of teachers this year. We're proposing we're hiring 15 new teachers. This is reflected in our budget number. We're moving 150,000 of this capital to build a new sign. We're creating this new program. And these are the 10 new things that we're doing with our extra budget capacity is probably not the right phrase to your terminology again. Like, okay, there's $1 million extra in revenue control limit this year, and this is where that $1 million essentially went. I definitely don't want to get again into like, this is, how much each teacher's being paid or, a super deep dive, but I do think I'd like to know when we have some new things coming forward. And again, I think that it kind of gets pieced in throughout the year, but maybe, if you guys are adding it or looking at it at the budget, and then let's have a look at it as part of that discussion as that budget's coming together again, whether that's in March, April, May, or whatever that looks like.
I think too, John, if I can butt in there too, it's along the line too, if we get out and the public are at the schools and they say, hey, what's going on down at Alomar, or what's going on the corner, or what's going here, we have an idea, say, oh yeah, in our last meeting we talked about, this is what that is, so we can give you an idea what it is. It's along that line, I think, more than anything else, right?
Yeah, and again, I think it goes back to some of the experience with the city, right? Every year we do a pretty extensive budget process, but you have your baseline, so anything that's staying the same, that's great. Okay, I don't need to see any of that. But if you're thinking about adding new positions, or new social workers, or a new program, or
Fire station?
new fire station. That's great. And again, maybe it's not even anything more than just a bullet. Like there's we're proposing 500,000 extra in curriculum this year because we need to buy a new science curriculum, and that's how that extra limit is being utilized. So I think that would be helpful for me to have a better understanding, kind of, again, from a very high level. I'm certainly not asking for a 4 or 5 hour meeting down the road somewhere. So thank you for your consideration of that.
Thank you, John, appreciate that. If there's nothing else, Dr. Freeman, any final words this evening?
Mr. President, members of the board, I don't have anything to add to the kind of the board's agenda and, how the board's working and moving forward. Just to remind everybody, we do have our regular meeting coming up. I think it's August 10th is the second Tuesday. President Nielsen and I are meeting Thursday morning to finalize the agenda. The budget revision is on there, as well as a recommendation for selection of a contractor for the Alomar School. And right now, Mr. French has kind of been reviewing the market, what the costs and compensation are for architects, contractors, and those kind of things. From that point, we would go into the negotiation on the budget on the building. So we're not that far along, but we are making progress, and Brookfield continues to add on and sell houses. So we're going to reach out to them for getting information out into their community about the election as well, because it's should be important to the homeowners down there.
Great.
That's all coming up.
Thank you very much. Well, if nobody has anything else, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 7:06.
I'll second.
And so you need to call roll on motion to adjourn.
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes.
Aye.